You ever wonder why the left absolutely cannot stand the fact that Elon Musk bought Twitter? Think about it. This is supposed to be the party that is all for promoting individual rights and free speech and free expression, right? Well, no. Because come to find out, when it comes to Twitter, the left had something to hide. It's almost laughable. In 2016, the Democrats pushed 4 years worth of investigation on a supposed Russia collusion into the Trump election. Then, in 2018, they start pushing this thing that Trump supposedly pressured Zelensky into investigating Joe Biden and Hunter Biden and their business dealings in Ukraine. They impeached Donald Trump because he opened up an investigation into a political opponent. Now come to find out, which we already knew this actually, by the way. What did they say? Every conspiracy theory is like 6 months from being true. Well, this one's like, what, a year from being true? Around a year from being true? Like, the Hunter Biden laptop story. Everyone knew this was true, yet they told us we were crazy for believing it. They said, oh, it's not a big deal. It was suppressed. Come to find out, Elon Musk has actual records that Twitter had conversations on suppressing the Hunter Biden laptop story prior to the 2020 election. And to make matters worse, the left opens up an investigation on Trump. Merrick Garland comes out the day after Trump decides that he's going to run for president again in 2024, that they're going to now hammer down on an investigation on Trump, and then blatantly comes out and says that the timing was right because Trump decided he was going to run for president. So they actually pushed this current investigation into Trump for the sole purpose of trying to eliminate a political opponent. The exact same thing they supposedly impeached Donald Trump over the first time. And then, now that we know there's actual evidence that is going to be released by Elon Musk of Twitter suppressing the Hunter Biden news story, which shows a major conflict of interest in the Biden family and their dealings in Ukraine, because right now we have a major war going on in Ukraine that we spend over $100 billion for. That you don't think that would have changed the potential outcome of the election? And to make matters worse, hindsight is always 2020. Do you think that people, if they knew for sure that Joe Biden and Hunter Biden had these dealings in Ukraine and that we were going to be in the war in Ukraine that we are right now, what is over 200,000 soldiers on both sides are supposedly dead now, that wouldn't have made a difference in the 2020 election? So not only has the left spent however many years telling you that you're crazy for even thinking about believing this story, and that wasn't a big deal, that you need to worry about Donald Trump taking some nuclear documents, some information that he already fucking knew anyway. It's not even classified to him, and he can declassify anything he wanted to as a president. It's in the Constitution. You may not like his personality, that's fine. I'm not saying he was a great person. But a lot of this stuff that they are pushing on him is completely unwarranted and bullshit. But they get mad at people for protesting on January 6th because they thought that the election was fraudulent. Well, I'm not going to say if the votes were suppressed, but stories were suppressed that definitely changed the outcome of an election. And this is true now. So to say that the left didn't manipulate an election, because, by the way, Twitter is a major donor to the Democratic Party, so is every other social media platform, we're kind of slowly finding out that some of the concerns over our presidential elections are turning out to be pretty true. The next thing I want to discuss is the FTX deal. If you think not the Democratic Party, but the government doesn't have a major role in the bankruptcy of FTX or any other cryptocurrency firm, I don't think you can not have some kind of concern about that. I never really cared for cryptocurrency, but it's only in any government's best interest that it doesn't exist. It completely undermines central currencies, and it completely undermines any government sovereignty. Did Sam Bankman-Fried donate a crazy amount of money to the Democratic Party? Yeah. I think he actually stole funds from his investors and gave it to members of the Democratic Party. But even though Sam Bankman-Fried was on their side, there's something bigger at play. And that bigger thing at play is the fact that cryptocurrency undermines the value of the American dollar. Isn't it weird? At the same time, now the government is starting to actually put into place their pilot program for an American digital currency, while Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are getting hammered because a lot of the companies that are involved with the trading of them are now going bankrupt. Look at BlockFi. BlockFi took a major hit from FTX. And there's a lot of fraud that is involved in the cryptocurrency market. Because of this fraud, their government is going to take advantage of it and push major regulation. And they're already trying to push major taxation on it. Those are like the two main incentives of investing in cryptocurrency to begin with. Furthermore, we now have a potential rail strike. Some of you may not agree with my opinion on this. Here's the thing. The railroad workers already get paid more than 94% of workers in America. The average salary for a rail worker is around $130,000 a year. They had already negotiated their pay in their contract already. So the fact that they think that they're not getting enough sick days, they have to realize that the unions negotiated however many sick days they have right now and their salary. This isn't because, like, this is already negotiated on. Now that contract, I believe, is coming up and they're trying to negotiate new pay, but they already have, and I have it here, 10 personal leave days up to 5 weeks, depending on seniority, in addition to 14 paid holidays. But the Democratic Party would tell you that they don't have anything, that we need to wage a war against corporate profits because they are not spending it for the best interest of their workers. But the unions are the ones that are negotiating the workers' salaries to begin with. The government should have no say in the negotiation between the railroad and the unions at all. I have no problem with unionizing. I have no problem with collective bargaining. No problem with it. I have a problem when the government gets involved. Because now how it works in the rail industry is that all 12 of the unions have to agree and ratify the contract that is being offered, right? That's being negotiated. The largest one in this circumstance denied it. Why did they deny it? Because they know that they hold the economy hostage, basically, if no one goes to work. And again, if this was just a workers' union negotiating with their private employer, fine. But they know that the government was going to get involved. So they're actually going to deny ratifying the negotiated contract, which involved, by the way, a 24% pay increase and back pay of $11,000 to each employee. 24% pay increase over the next 4 years. That's crazy. But they denied it because they know the government's going to get involved and they can get more. So they're leveraging government power because right now the Democrats don't want the economy to just go completely to shit because that will ruin their chance of any kind of re-election. So they're going to push their government power over the private sector and the rail in order to get political gain and so that the unions get their own gain. Can you blame the unions? No. I think unions are highly corrupt, by the way. I think that what this will end up causing is layoffs in the rail industry because the increase in wages, usually how it works out, it actually cuts out new labor into that industry, which is what the unions want because they're getting paid more, but it doesn't benefit any new blood coming into the sector. It doesn't really benefit the industry. Now, again, this is just a prime example of the Democratic Party and their communist agenda. And this isn't crazy talk, by the way. Like this is very verifiable. It's pushing their communist agenda and trying to nationalize a lot of these industries that have a huge stake in the economy, like the rail industry or the oil industry. Why is it that they aren't pushing for domestic oil production? Because they're not. And anyone who says they are needs to really go and read. Oh, they have permits. No, they don't. They can't use them. They're going to a place like Venezuela or Saudi Arabia where it's either nationalized or it's nationalized but doesn't seem like it's nationalized in the form of Saudi Arabia because the royal family basically controls everything. The royal family is the government. Same thing with Qatar. People think Qatar is a capitalist country. It's not. It's basically a socialist communist country in disguise. Because the royal family sits on the board or has a major controlling share in all the private businesses. So when you start talking about like, oh, workers' rights in Qatar, it's not capitalism that's pushing the human rights violations. It's the government itself. The government itself, by the way, approves the visas in Qatar, which allows these people from poor countries to come work and get manipulated and allows private industry to take advantage of the workers. But it's not that private industry has a choice. They can only get these workers because the government of Qatar doesn't allow their own citizens, who has only an 89% literacy rate and very, very, very low skill working level, because it's like 75% of citizens in Qatar actually work for the government. That's why they have to bring in workers from outside, and they only approve the visas from poor countries. They don't bring in skilled workers from Europe. They don't bring in skilled workers from the US. They bring in non-skilled laborers from extremely poor countries. And the royal family, who basically owns all the private businesses in Qatar, are the ones that are taking advantage of those workers. But let's have the World Cup there, right? And the funny thing is that they want to talk about LGBTQ rights and the other workers' rights there in Qatar. And the left is supposed to be the party for the working person. But you have people like Ilhan Omar, who goes to Qatar and supports their economy by going to the World Cup. I thought we were protesting this, right? They're not the working party. They're not for anything other than them being in office. The Republicans are just as bad. Now, the other problem with the rail strike is that the bill that they're voting on, you can't find it. The only writing they have is the minutes from the meeting yesterday. There's no bill documentation with the text that shows you what's in the bill. And you know as well as I do that when our politicians go to pass a piece of legislation, they don't just pass legislation that only has to do with the topic they're discussing. Like, it's not only going to be legislation that discusses ending the possibility of a strike for the railroad industry. No, it's going to have other things that have nothing to do with it, trying to push their little agenda. But they're going to back the other party against the wall, saying that, oh, well, you're only going to hurt the economy, which neither one of them really want, right? Because it doesn't look good politically. So they're going to leverage that in order to pass a bill that may do what they're talking about in ending any threat of a rail strike, but is also going to have maybe some other spending provisions for some things that are just crazy. I don't think there wouldn't be another, $10 billion that is going to be allocated to fucking Ukraine in a bill that is supposed to end a rail strike. Because this is the stuff that our government does.